What's going on, my fellow rock and rollers? Don't forget to hit the bell notification icon to be notified every time I upload a new video on my channel. And the members of Blind Melon's 90s lineup all came from small towns all over the United States. Guitarist and bassist Roger Stevens and Brad Smith came from West Point, Mississippi, while frontman Shannon Hoon hailed from Lafayette, Indiana, while rhythm guitarist Christopher Thorn came from Dover, Pennsylvania, and drummer Glen Graham was from Columbus, Mississippi. The members seemed made for each other as they were all considered outcasts in their respective communities, with Stevens remembering his early musical days, saying, "When Brad and I were doing high school bands, it wasn't so much that we were outcasts, people were just completely baffled by what we were doing. I think they thought we just lost our minds or something, and it wasn't that we got a bad response, it's that we got no response, other than, well, we'll just let them do their thing and they'll grow out of it," he'd remember. But the pair would never grow out of it, and that was a good thing. The pair would soon hatch a plan to move across the country to what they believed was the rock and roll mecca, which was Los Angeles. Smith would reveal, "We always got magazines like Hit Parader and Metal Hammer, and we were like, F it man, it's all happening in LA. We had big balls and little brains, and we moved to Los Angeles to take our chance," he'd say. Upon arriving in Los Angeles in 1989, the pair were shocked by what they saw. LA was nothing like what the press painted it to be, with Stevens remembering, "It was the remnants of the glam metal scene, which was ultra sad. I was depressed from the music scene. It was just horrible." The pair found some support though when they met rhythm guitarist Christopher Thorn, who would remember his own visions of LA, saying, "I moved out in early 87 or 88 and went on some auditions. I was in this sort of folk band and that's how I met Brad. I put an ad in the Music Connection, Brad called, and we became friends." It soon became apparent to the trio that the only way they were going to finish assembling their band was to find outsiders from other states. That's where they met Indiana transplant Shannon Hoon. Hoon not only fled to LA to find a career in music, but he also became very well known to the police in his hometown, which eventually forced him to leave. Having spent only a few weeks in Los Angeles, he would eventually meet Stevens, and Stevens would be the first to meet Shannon, with Smith remembering, "Roger had this meeting with Shannon. He called me up and said, 'Brad, you gotta go down right now to this rehearsal space and meet this guy Shannon. I'm telling you, he's the guy, he's amazing.' He just seemed like a bro from Mississippi. He was just completely unpretentious, unaffected by LA thus far, and he felt like one of us immediately," Smith would remember. Smith and Rogers immediately clicked with Hoon, and they bonded over their mutual hatred of the glam metal scene in LA. But one thing the pair did notice about Hoon early on was his volatile behavior, with Smith remembering, "He talked a lot, he would not shut up. I remember the first night we decided we were going to be in a band, we had gotten really drunk, we were crashing in my apartment, and he tried to pick a fight with me. He got mad because I was laughing at him, he said something really stupid, and that was the thing about Shannon, he'd say everything that came to his mind. A lot of the times it would be like, 'Why did you say that?' Miraculously, he didn't throw a punch, and it could have ended right there," he'd remember. The newly formed band hadn't yet settled on a name or even a drummer who suited their style. And up until this point, the band had been playing with local drummers, and as you would expect, they wanted somebody who was an outsider from a small town. That's when they enlisted Glen Graham, whom they had already known, who was from Mississippi. With the band assembled, they just needed to figure out a name, and it would be a phrase from Smith's father when he was a child that would be the inspiration for the group's name. Smith's father used to call some of their hippie neighbors back home in Mississippi Blind Melon, and with the name chosen, the band quickly set their sights on recording a demo tape. Unlike a lot of stories in the music business where bands slug it out in clubs for years, Blind Melon hadn't even yet played a single show, and they were already courting interest from major labels based on the strength of their 4-song demo. Also helping them was their musical connections. Shannon Hoon was friends with perhaps the biggest rock star of the day, Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses, who also hailed from Lafayette, Indiana. Axl had been good friends with Shannon's sister, and his sister personally asked Axl to help her brother out when he moved to Los Angeles. Just the idea that Shannon had a relationship with Axl caused record labels to foam at the mouth. Also helping things was that Guns N' Roses were recording their epic double album Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 in 1990 and 1991, and Hoon would provide guest vocals on several tracks including The Garden, November Rain, and Don't Cry, and even appeared in the hugely popular music video for Don't Cry. The band would eventually sign a deal with Capitol Records only because, according to Stevens, they paid us more money. But the band's newfound success also started to hamper their creativity. Too much partying resulted in failed recording sessions, and the band tried to record an EP with Neil Young's producer David Briggs, but the recordings would be shelved. In order to get away from the hard partying lifestyle of LA and all its distractions, the group relocated to Durham, North Carolina, in the peace and quiet of a house they referred to as the Sleepy House, and the band was finally able to get to work on their first studio record. Smith would reveal the mood in North Carolina and how it got the band to focus, telling, "We weren't going to leave and go out to town because there was nothing to do in Durham, so we just played music, smoked weed, and everyone was into painting at the time. It was a blast. It was a very strange environment. Shannon tinfoiled the windows so it was always dark in there with candles, and Rogers didn't take off his pajamas for a week, he'd remember." And by early 1992, the band had relocated temporarily to Seattle, which was now a hotspot for up-and-coming alternative rock acts. The band had also taken over the London Bridge recording studios with renowned producer Rick Parashar, who had worked with the likes of Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam. While the band had endured distractions in LA, things in Seattle went pretty smoothly for the most part, with Smith recalling, "I remember it being really easy. Apart from all our dope smoking and all the disagreements we may have had, we had our shit together musically. We would play 2 or 3 takes of a song and that was it. There was no chopping on the tape machine. The only thing that may have gotten overdubbed were some guitar solos and the lead vocals." So I look back on those times and I'm like, there's a real sense of musical purity and performance to that record. I think that's what's missing from today's records. Blind Melon really captured that, he'd remember. One thing the band did do that was a bit strange was halt recording on their debut record halfway through the process and accept an invitation to open for John Lydon's Public Image Limited in the spring of 1992. But according to Christopher Thorn, the break helped the band become better musicians, revealing, "This was a really good thing for the band because we had our pre-tour recordings, went out and toured for 6 weeks and played every single night. So we were even much better when we got back. I felt like we were really firing on all the pistons at that point." And the band's 1992 self-titled record would feature 2 massive hit songs, including Change and No Rain. Most of the songs on the band's debut record were written as a unit, with the exception of 2 songs. Change would be penned by Hoon, while Smith would write No Rain. And the band members had assumed that because of their connection to Guns N' Roses, that their debut album would be an instantaneous hit, but that wouldn't be the case. Thorn would reveal, "I think we were under the false assumption that our record was going to come out and be a giant hit, and then reality sort of struck us. We realized, wow, this is really hard work. We were having a lot of fun because we were playing and seeing the country, but I think we were a bit stressed out. We didn't realize that you actually had to work a record. Thank God we had a record company like Capitol who knew it was going to be a slow build, and they were more than prepared to keep us on the road for a really long time." The band would get some high-profile slots opening for Guns N' Roses in 1992 and 1993 as part of their Use Your Illusion tour, sharing the band's private MGM 727 jet. But when the band was on their own, it was a little less glamorous, with Smith remembering, "We named one of our t-shirts Crammed in a Van Tour. We knew we were making an impact because we'd come around the same city a second time, and the crowd had doubled or tripled, and the word was getting out about the band. That was probably the most romantic period of my musical career," he'd remember. And to help promote the album, the band would work with Smells Like Teen Spirit director Samuel Baer on the video for No Rain. The end result would be one of the most memorable videos on MTV during the early 90s. The video would mix together clips of the band playing in an open field with a memorable outcast who was dressed as a B-girl. The video shot the band up the charts by the summer of 1993, but with success also brought problems. The band wanted to get off the road, but bigger and better offers kept coming up, including a high-profile slot opening for Lenny Kravitz in Europe. Pressure from management and the label forced them to stay on the road for a year and a half, and the longer the band stayed on the road, the worse Shannon Hoon's behavior became. Adding to the tension were business disagreements over publishing percentages, as Hoon wanted more publishing than his bandmates, and while the business squabbles would be worked out, they would create resentments between the band members and be further complicated by the fact that outside members of the band would also get songwriting credits. Hoon's friend Howie Boskin would be credited as a songwriter on the track Tones of Home, and we'll talk more about Boskin a little later in the video. So about a year after Blind Melon's debut record would come out, it would finally go platinum. And while the band may have dealt with one pitfall of success, another was ready to destroy the group. Singer Shannon Hoon's addiction to cocaine only escalated with time, but the band was well aware of his drug use from the moment they met him. Stevens would remember, Shannon's drug use, that was from day one. That wasn't a new thing. I mean, he went through phases. He was always game for whatever. I think he had a lot of problems back when he was living in Indiana, and he got out. Coke was the problem. Heroin was never the problem or anything like that. We tried to deal with it, got him into treatment a few times and things like that. We did an intervention one time and he didn't show up for it. Pretty classic, you'd remember. The world was shocked though in April of 1994 when Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain reportedly took his own life. The tragic news seemed to scare Shannon Hoon into sobriety, at least temporarily. And following their grueling tour of America and Europe, each member would retreat back to their respective homes to recuperate and think of new ideas for their sophomore record. Hoon temporarily went back to Indiana while the rest of the band flew to New Orleans, and prior to the band entering the studio again, they were offered the chance to perform at Woodstock 94. It was a great opportunity for the band and one they couldn't turn down. During the performance, Hoon would don his girlfriend's white dress and be tripping on LSD. The band would soon relocate to New Orleans, a town which seemed to be the worst possible place for Hoon to record their follow-up record, given his fragile sobriety. Hoon would tell a local New Orleans paper that it's a city where one's willpower is tested daily, and it would be a test that he wouldn't pass. The band would enlist the help of producer Andy Wallace, who had previously worked with Nirvana, Jeff Buckley, and Slayer, and the recording sessions for their follow-up record titled Soup were a mess and destructive, with Smith recalling, "That was total mayhem. At that time I had just come out of my pot haze, but the band wasn't finished with that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of coke, ecstasy, heroin, marijuana, whatever you wanted. It was at the studio all the time. It was crazy, man. We didn't go into the studio until 2 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and nobody left until the sun was coming up. It was just a total vampire existence, laced with drugs, alcohol, and effing craziness. People were there that I had no idea why they were there. Looking back, it's amazing that we got the record done at all, but our chemistry was that we had our shit together." And the resulting album, Soup, took on a much darker tone than the group's debut record. The band would tackle topics including drug use, child murder, serial killers, and many other topics. And while the album didn't feature radio-friendly songs like No Rain, the record showed the band had grown musically and were not afraid to be honest. And critics, for their part, would be split on the record, with some panning the album, while others praised it, with Kerrang ranking it as one of the best albums of the year, beating out Alice in Chains and Faith No More. The band's time to celebrate the release of Soup would be short-lived. The album would be released in August of 1995, and around the time of its release, Hoon would end up in rehab. Following his stint in rehab, Hoon had also become a father, and for some addicts, fatherhood seems to straighten them out, but for Hoon, it was a period of temporary sobriety. And by the time they started to tour across America, Hoon was struggling with staying clean. Thorn would recall, "I remember going to Seattle down the coast, and Lisa, Hoon's girlfriend, and the baby were there on the bus. It was great. It kind of felt like, cool, this is the next phase of Blind Melon. I remember playing really well, kind of loving it. Then we got to LA, and some boneheads turned Shannon onto drugs. And Hoon's drug counselor advised against going out on tour, but management tried to stem their concerns by hiring a handler to stay around Shannon. It became pretty clear that the drug counselor wasn't doing his job, with Thorn remembering, Shannon's in the back on the bus doing drugs, and the guy's up front taking up room on the bus. We were like, this is stupid. And the band would send him packing with the idea that Hoon's latest binge would soon end and things would return to normal. But by this point in the band's history, the drug use had spread to the other members of the band, and it was starting to affect their performances. Smith even considered taking drastic measures, remembering, "It was a secret I had between me and my now wife, that I may just slip off in the middle of the night, get a plane ticket and go home. It was effing stupid. I was really frustrated, and I think part of that was because I didn't use coke. I never have. So when you see your friends start crumbling around you from that kind of substance abuse, and you're out on the road, and you're trying to make the best of this, people waiting on you to fail, you could have done better than that." And Blind Melon's last gig was in Houston, Texas, and it would be a sloppy performance as Hoon was high before he went on stage. Following the band's performance in Houston, they headed to New Orleans, which would be the last night the band would spend together on the bus. Hoon stayed up the whole night doing drugs, and as the bus pulled into the band's hotel in New Orleans, Hoon's bandmates would check into their rooms while Shannon would wander through the streets. He would return to the bus and fall asleep in one of the bunks, and when the band's soundman tried to wake up the singer for an afternoon soundcheck, he was unresponsive. He would die of a heart attack caused by a drug overdose. While it's easy to blame management or his band for being on the road when Hoon should have been at home dealing with his demons, His bandmate Stevens would claim that Lafayette wasn't free of temptations either, telling Metal Hammer. He had a lot of connections there. We caught a lot of flack later on, but I always told people, look, this guy is showing up to rehearsals 20 pounds underweight, and we hadn't even been around him. Then we got out on tour and he was clean for a while in the beginning. This was one of those instances where it was a 2-day situation that got him to where he is today after being clean for a while, he'd remember. Those close to Shannon found a change in his demeanor in the weeks and months that led to his death. Remember that friend of his, Howie Boskin, who I mentioned at the beginning of the video, who co-wrote Tones of Home? He would tell Rolling Stone magazine following Hoon's death, Shannon and I were best friends when we lived together, and the last time I talked to Shannon was over the phone. I called him an effing a-hole selling out poser. He called about Tones of Home's songwriting royalties and threatened me with his attorneys. It just made me feel like crying because he wasn't the same person. While Ricky Rackman, former host of Headbangers Ball, would tell the magazine, I saw him at Woodstock and I'd just gotten married, and I was like, oh, there's my good friend Shannon. He just looked at me and was glazed and just walked right by. I was pissed. I thought, he's got the full rockstar thing going, he's effed out of his head. And following the death of Hoon, the surviving members of Blind Melon mulled getting a new singer, but they would decide to disband. But 11 years after Hoon's death, the surviving members of Blind Melon would finally reunite and enlist new singer Travis Warren. The band would tour on and off for the next decade, and in 2015 the band played a free show in Hoon's hometown of Lafayette, and his daughter Nico would join the group on stage to perform the song Change. That concludes today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe. If you guys have suggestions for future topics, throw them in the comment section down below. Take care.